Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're talking to G-Man. I'm first going to start with this question so that people have clarity. When and how were you named G-Man? I think that's a good place to start because I think after that I also want to get into defining some of the jargon we're going to use because I've tried to stay away from jargon on this podcast, but there is no way I can have a chat with you without mentioning a bunch of stuff which will sound like jargon. So I thought we'll get G-Man out of the way and then we'll get into the other stuff.
Sure. Thanks, Varun. Thanks for this. Actually, my full name is Gowthaman Ragothaman. It's the longest name ever that could fill into any visiting card or into any one of those building entry point checklists. In one of those meetings in the US, when I had gone for a meeting, they couldn't fill my name in full. And the client who was standing next to me said, just put it as G-Man and then we can get on with life. And then it became a big joke. And in the US, G-Man has a special uh, powerful source of reference. So it just got stuck here. It became a joke, and then so much so that everybody started calling me G-Man. And now, and my son likes it because he thinks it is Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, and G-Man. So here I am. So no, I don't even recognize myself if somebody calls me any other way.
Yeah,
So
because I remember the first time I met you a couple of years ago in Jaipur at WP Stream, and everyone kept calling you G-Man. And I'm like, okay, I don't know you at all. Do I call you G-Man or do I figure out what your actual name is and ask you that? And I remember you telling me just call me G-Man. And I also go back to that time primarily because the way I was introduced to you for the first time was the fact that you would be doing a session on blockchain.
yeah.
Every single time I have spoken to you or seen you doing something, you have spoken about something around blockchain. And at some point, I'm like, okay, this G-Man is the one person I know speaks about blockchain more than anybody else. So I want to ask you a very basic question because I feel that most people, including me, are worry about actually asking it when they say what actually is, because there's some term thrown around, right? There's blockchain thrown around, there's crypto thrown around, but most of us don't necessarily know what that actually means. And while you get a broader ramification, I think it's important to kind of define what that actually is and how it actually works.
That's right. And a good question. Yeah. So, uh, in simple words, blockchain is a chain of blocks locked together. Okay. So, easier way to remember it. But if you have to really look at it from a functional point of view, I need to sort of give an example. Uh, Today, if you say, let's say, you have to give somebody 100 rupees and you give it to the other person, the proof of having you given them 100 rupees is that you should not have 100 rupees with you. So that's the proof because it's gone out of your bank account or out of your purse and it has gone to somebody else's purse or the bank account. So we have always lived in a world where giving up something is that you don't having it with you. But in a digital world, when I send a mail to you, I still have the attachment with me. I only sent you a copy.
Yeah.
So when I send a document, you get the document, but I also have a copy of the document with me. So what's the proof that I've given it to you? So the proof can only come when the receiving person gives the consent to say that, no, yes, I've got it. There's
Yeah.
no other way of recording it, right? So when two entities agree that a transfer is being made on from both sides of the value exchange, that that exchange gets recorded in a block. It becomes immutable after that, which means both of them maintain a record to say I have given you and you say I have received it, and then both those records are made immutable in the sense that it's not touched once again. It happens when both those records are locked and blocked into a chain, and it cannot be touched once again.
Yep.
So that's the fundamental principle of blockchain, that every time there is a transfer of value between two or more entities, you block it and lock it. And that's what it means. Okay, so in simple terms, that's what it is. So the blockchain is a chain of records recorded so that it is immutable for future.
And And I know that the first time that I kind of came across the term, right? And I was initially like, when there's something happening, I don't know enough about it, so I will try to read up about it. And every time you have given me by far the simplest explanation, which I have not found this anywhere else. Um, in recent times, I found simpler explanations for NFTs, which is I
Yeah.
think far ahead of this than I have actually found for blockchain. But have you given me the I think in essence a simplest way to kind of explain what this is, because at some point the conversation around it in last many years has kind of scaled up, right? On one
Right.
end you have this entire talk about data and first party data, on the other end you have blockchain, and then this cryptocurrencies came in. So
That's right.
it almost feels like a whole new world order that is happening, but
Yeah.
the mainstream is still not necessarily considering this as mainstream. So if you take a slightly macro point of view on this and took a wider lens of it,
Right.
what have you seen as the ramifications of what this has had into how, I mean, every aspect of what we do is getting affected?
Yeah. So the challenge or the issue we have today is there is a blockchain-led discussions that the enterprises are discussing in parallel to the other discussion, and not very often, at least even in my recent 18 months of experience, I've not seen any enterprise talk both of them at the same uh, platform or wavelength of thinking. They are considered as two alternatives. That is where the problem begins. Okay,
Yeah.
the reason is because it is now being seen as a replacement to an existing technology and not a upgrade to an existing technology. And that is why people don't talk it in the same way. That's the first point. Second point is wherever you are therefore using it or being used on new enterprises, new industries who have not used any legacy infrastructures or technologies, then you say, okay, this is the best way to do it, and let me use this approach for settlement or payment. Uh, and that is why you are hearing about blockchain now even more, and to use the first acronym NFT, even more primarily because NFTs is to my mind the best uh, common man application of blockchain, because
Yeah.
it's an asset of an individual, uh, secured cryptographically and made available for exchanging value
Yeah.
without an interference of any regulatory bodies or authorities. So, so that's a challenge, Varun, today. It's now seen as an parallel infrastructure and not an existing upgrade to the infrastructure. If I have answered your question.
Yeah, you have, and just as a follow up, what I actually want to kind of get from you is when did you start getting into this space, right? Because obviously I met you at a point when you were really already focused on it, but at which, so your own journey with this entire side of data and technology of yeah.
Yeah, so in my last job when I was with WPP and with Mindshare or Group M, one of my key responsibilities was as a chief strategy officer of the Mindshare's Fast team. I'm sure you will know it. I hope Fast is still there. I'll let us speak to someone. But as part of that is to build capabilities in adaptive marketing. That was our one of my key responsibilities. That time programmatic was taking off. Now it has almost become much more frequently used. But 5 years back, we were just warming up to a demand side platform. DMPs were moving into becoming a DSP, and SSPs were being formed, ad networks, and suddenly we realized that nobody is viewing it, so we introduced viewability metrics. Within a span of 2 years, we started adding one tech over the other, and
Yeah.
automation became programmatic. And even before you realize, you require 10 technologies to make automation. So, uh, so the handshake between technologies was extremely cumbersome. I'm still believe it is still cumbersome, because once you lock into a set of technology partners, moving into another one is becoming even more difficult even today. So that was the first trigger in my head, that if the handshake between the brand and the publisher in the entire supply chain and the transfer of value from brand to agency to profiles to bitstream to RTB to viewability to publisher. By the time the entire journey happens, you reconcile everything. The campaign was over. Even today, and you reconcile the information from all of them only as a post facto commercial reconciliation. But the poor planner, when he is running this campaign, he is running on blind faith. Uh, 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 and then, for example, I can simplify it to say that if I want 100 impressions on day one, uh, I actually get only 60 of those impressions fully viewed, but I get to know it after 30, 40 days. But I plan for it every day, assuming it is 100. There is some improvement and making it 90 or 80, but in reality, after 30 days, I go back and tell the client that, hey, you wanted 3,000, actually only 2,000 happened. Here is the bill back as a check back for after post reconciliation. The client may turn back and say, I don't want the money back. I want leads because I gave you the money to give me leads.
Yeah.
So that's when this entire idea, when I was trying to look at it and see if each of these participants can be put in a distributed ledger and you get instant visibility for the entire campaign, what happens to the benefit? So in my view, more than blockchain and Bitcoin, I was looking at it as a distributed ledger technology that can be made available to the in our industry to talk about it. Everybody was in the fintech world. Probably I was a lone man shouting from the rooftop, talking about marketing and distributed ledger. Still, I am. Very few who are talking about it, but that's where it began. That the same concept of a blockchain, the proof of having transferred something between two entities, can be used across the advertising supply chain. The benefits are intense and immense for both the brands, the publishers, and the advertisers. Varun. That is the heart of it.
What you just spoke about, and I know there were a few terms in there, but I feel from a larger sense, what that really shows, and this is something which I've learned and I continue to tell people, right? So when people talk about advertising and marketing, still speak about it in a very old age term. I blame Mad Men for it. I feel that brought back that nostalgia value to old school advertising, but this is a large part of what it is. I mean, I like, and I feel it's gotten even more accelerated in recent times, primarily because you are dealing with so many tech stacks, so many different technologies coming together. Automation is taking over many aspects of what we do, and rightly so, right? Like what you just mentioned, the pace at which you need to move, and the vast stream of data that you're dealing with, there is no way that you can do it manually. Like that's it. It's beyond that. So when I look at that, what I constantly tell younger people when I speak to them who want to come into the industry, I'm like, guys, a large part of your job is going to be tech. A large part of your job is going to be data. You cannot say I'm in this for as a creative business. That is one part of it. Even the creative parts need data as well. And I keep hinging on the data part because I feel data is actually the most uniform part across all of it. And there is this consistent conversation these days between what is third-party data, what is first-party data, all of that. That's obviously the new one, right? I remember that when you and I had a pre-chat, I was talking about the world without cookies.
Yes.
Is what we were talking about. So I'd love for you to get into that, and I have a couple of things that will join these pieces together, which I want to ask you.
So if you look at it from a first party, third party, or second party data now, that's also becoming very important as a new world and the world beyond cookies. Uh, there are two types of data sets. One is we also have IoT data now, isn't it? So location data and name it. Uh, but if you have to really look back and say as a pristine media planner, it finally boils down to the role of a media plan or a communications plan is to say, have I reached, who is my audience, where are they, and how often should I talk to them, and cap it if it is beyond reason so that he doesn't get irritated with my communication, and check whether the person responds to the communication in a particular way. That's a very and if you look at the kind of data sets we require now at each of these stages, the amount of data has increased only to make those things sharper. Today, when you say right audience, earlier we started off with only 4 or 5 definitions: age, income, sex, occupation. Now
Yeah.
we have gone to more further definitions of those audiences as who have purchased something before, or many other attributes, because data helped to define those attributes better because it was not available earlier. So we have to wear that hat of a communications person, and actually you can afford to be creative there to say, if I know my consumer very well, what kind of attributes or data sets I can use at every stage of this answering this question. In terms of target market, then we can say location is important, or when point of sale is very important. Frequency capping is everywhere. It is about whatever data is available to me or made available to me. I use it in a creative manner to answer those 5 questions. So then life becomes very simple. Then you exactly know what's the third party data, what's the second party data set, and what's first party data sets. First party data is essentially the one you own.
Yeah.
But the thing is, a lot of things happen too fast, too soon, with too many players coming into it, and each one of them having their own business models, which I used to call it as point solutions. So today we have a bunch of point solutions not connected with each other, and there are a lot of overlaps, and that's where we are today. And uh, we should optimize it, Varun, in my view. There are huge opportunities to optimize the entire supply chain, which is what we want to do.
Um, and when I look at what you do right now, which is kind of working across this entire metric of it, and you've spoken about a bunch of the challenges. If you're looking at how you see this kind of moving ahead and how you see it all functioning together, what would those points be? And I want to add on piece to that, saying what would you see really getting disrupted in terms of how things function at present?
Yeah, so I can refer it to our own journey. We started off with this entire supply chain on a ledger or a supply chain on a platform, and then when the cookies and the privacy sandbox discussion came into and the deadline of end of this year, we suddenly moved from impressions to identities as well. So today you look at DSPs, they are using a bunch of profiles which they create from third party or second party data sets, most of which are not consented, at least in a compliant manner. So suddenly the targeting side of the system goes away. We won't be able to target as we were able to target using cookies earlier. So the entire supply chain is now getting rewired. The disruption to in my view is some of these players need to talk a lot more closer. You see the way some of the DSPs are now trying to partner with first-party data companies like Trade Desk with Walmart,
Yeah.
even in India, MediaMath with Flipkart. So everybody is now trying to find a way in which how can I get authentic first-party data
Yeah.
for sharper profiling. That's a race to the first-party ownership. That obviously means that the new word I'm going to introduce, you will know it, CDP. So nobody had a CDP before. Now everybody wants to have a customer data platform, because if you don't have a CDP, you won't know your own consumer.
Yeah.
So that's a big disruption now in at one end about whether it is the brand or the publisher, the rush towards knowing their own consumer, which they never knew before, but they will now want to know more. Uh, uh, and that leads to logically next step about how do I identify them and activate them, and therefore compliance and consent. And even though India is still not under any kind of GDPR or CCPA regulations, when personal data protection bill or a PDPA or the act comes into play, then your data needs to be securely managed as well. These are huge headwinds and disruptions which the industry is not ready to talk or get ready prepared for today.
You know, And you mentioned DSP a couple of times, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. DSP is data service provider is the
One side platform on one side of the spectrum,
yeah.
whose only job is to identify audiences, profiles.
And that from the way I've seen it, and correct me if I'm wrong, primarily came from the ease of the fact that okay, we don't have to necessarily manage the data of our consumer. There's somebody already doing it. Let's just contract it to them, and they'll give us the data about the consumer, and then we'll work with that. Whereas um, I also feel the first party data conversation is interesting from just how much we're actually purchasing online as well. I feel that there's some way a connector that focus is kind of coming from there because till it wasn't transactional, as much as we spoke about content, as much as we spoke about
Right.
what we are being targeted, etc. Once that targeting became about us actually spending money,
Yeah.
and obviously on the other end there is the polarization and the entire news part of it, which obviously gets is a large focus. But I feel it's the economics when money actually exchanged hands and the data became a thing, which is when everybody finally wanted to own their data rather than work with the contractor. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely. So, take for example, most of us log into a website and read content, but we don't really log in with our email addresses. We just access content, right?
Yeah.
If you go to any publisher today and ask how many readers you have, they will say, let's say I have 25 million readers. And if you ask them how many of those 25 million readers you know them by email addresses, they'll say, oh, I will have to check with my subscription department and get back to you, because that's the subscription department who has maybe 5 million of the 25 million readers, not the remaining 15 million readers. So that is where the world is now. While we have we have followers but not fans, we have readers but not authenticated readers, we have consumers but not loyalists. So uh, that's where the industry is moving towards now, to say how much of my consumer I can know, because when cookies go away, addressability, if it is very important, can only happen if you know your consumer. Otherwise, like what Google is saying, you have to only do flocks or cohorts. So
Yeah.
we are, I think we are complicating our life, our industry by adding up new things every couple of years or every year. But I think the time has come to really simplify it, to say go back to first principles. That's
Yeah.
the challenges.
And that's actually a great point because at some point, I would say a pre digital revolution, if I call it a digital generation, or whatever the term which you coin up for each conversation comes up. Um, it was simpler where every company would own the data of their consumers and they would work
Right,
with that, and at some point you'd have a few people you'd work with, but largely you own most of it.
right.
Which is why I keep going back to economics. I feel that when it becomes okay, it will cost us lesser to get from somebody else. You tend to go for that.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, on the other hand, what I also feel, and this is something which I've constantly asked about, and I think about is how much does the consumer actually care about their data being used? I've
yeah.
heard varying levels of thoughts on that, um, I look at a generalized audience, not an evolved audience. I feel the generalized audience doesn't even get the concept of it, so they're just using it anyway. Um,
Absolutely.
it's only the evolved ones who get into conversation, but no, my data is being used, etc.
Yes.
But which is why I don't think it's a consumer problem. It's more a business responsibility and a regulation problem than it is a consumer problem.
Totally with you. The thing is, the entire digital medium was sold on the back of addressability. When digital spend started growing, uh, the sale is that I can address this consumer and I can personalize my ads to them. So put money here. So that was a sale. Otherwise, so-called traditional media was doing a very good job in whatever they were
Yeah.
doing it in some kind of an assessment, right? So the addressability was the drug that
Hmm.
that drove money towards digital, and we used cookies as a means to address those consumers, even
Hmm.
though they were 50% efficient only, but still something is better than nothing, and then we used cookies to address consumers, and we started abusing it so much so that it led towards overexposure. Same guy getting 10 ads a day, and then the cookies were inefficient, where the context was going out of the way, and that's what led to the next stage of using those to recommend some content, and the recommendation became an echo chamber where you are recommending wrong things to the wrong people or the left things to the right people. I'm just using left and right in the right manner.
Yeah.
You get it. So it's a trap. We started up with addressability, and we added complications across uh, overexposure, wrong exposure, bad context. And that's when it leads to regulations. And now we want to cut the umbilical cord or go back to the root and say, cut the cookies and look at some other form of addressing audiences. And that's the challenge we are in. And any other form of making addressability can only be through consent from the consumer to say that, okay, I am willing to be addressed in whatever form I want to be addressed. And that consent management is not there before. It's a new thing that we're introducing to in the ecosystem today. That's the problem we have gotten into. Varun.
And when looking at and when you move looking at this whole world with beyond cookies conversation that is trying to be, you also had the platforms kind of turn around and say, no, it'll actually affect how small businesses function, and you see, because to an extent, one large, I would say, section of business that has really used digital smartly has been small businesses, right? Anybody who has a startup or a small business has really used it. Does this put them back at a disadvantage where they were, compared to how things have become for them?
I would say yes and no. I'll explain why I say both. Small businesses, when they use any one platform or multiple platforms, I mean, the obvious one that comes to everybody's mind is Facebook. They built a marketplace, and small businesses do a very good job on Facebook. Let's say the small business wants to do a business with another platform like Facebook. The challenge for the small businesses will be that they won't be able to do an omni platform evaluation, because both the platforms will say my consumers on my platform, and they have given me some terms and conditions on which I'm engaging with them. I cannot give you back results at a granular level. I can only give you at an aggregate. So the Facebook or any other platform will say, you wanted sale, I've given you sale, and I can give you some broad aggregated level of inputs. So the platform in this new world, the platform will find difficult to operate with more than one or two platforms. So these business enterprises, or they may choose to say, I'll go to only one, as long as that one particular platform works. So to answer to your question, yes and no, in the sense that the platforms will have to make some choices where the business enterprises will have to make some choices to go to one or two platforms or fewer platforms. Instead of today, they can make some choices of using any platform they want. So the challenge for small businesses in terms of this question is no, because you'll have less choices to make. Yes, there is no problem because you are very good with whatever platform you're going to work with. That to my mind is the critical point to understand.
And the other two parts of which I think we need to get into in depth with is the whole conversation around cryptocurrency and NFTs. While cryptocurrencies, I'm just going to say, and we don't have to get into it deeper, is really focused on using blockchain as thought process and really applying it to currency as a system. What I'm actually more interested to talk to you about is NFTs. Seems to be the flavor of the season right now. But and also because I saw something something very interesting yesterday, which I think is a great example of how it's being used. There's a band called Kings of Leon, and what Kings of Leon have done is that if you buy a specific album of theirs, you actually they're treating it like an NFT. I think there's an add-on to it. and you actually get front row seats to all their concerts for life,
Yes.
which I think is a phenomenon. I mean, just the
Yes.
simple part is you own a part of that artist's music, and because of that, you get to go for the concert for free. Suddenly makes it so much simpler.
Yes.
But also, I'm just thinking about the how every single piece of things that we do can become an NFT.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting one. Yeah, so we were just talking about it yesterday as well. So if you have to say NFT is essentially a non-fungible token, right? But if I have to tell you that you replace the word non-fungible, which essentially is exchangeable, that I can exchange something with somebody else,
Hmm.
right? And if you replace the word token to a voucher,
Hmm.
what we are saying is an exchangeable voucher. So if I have a voucher and I can give it to you, and you give me something back in return without having anybody else involved in this, that's what NFT is. Yes, the NFT has become a catchword because whatever I'm exchanging to you is authentic, it's secure. That is where cryptography comes in. And if you are able to give me a value which you think is worth giving it to me, you don't need any middlemen or any regulatory bodies or central repositories to mediate the transaction because it is trusted between two parties. So that is why NFTs are becoming an attractive thing because, in my view, I see it as two things. One is authenticity of an asset because it is cryptographically secured, and two is it has to be scarce. If it is freely available, then there is no value to it. So to me, it is an authentic, scarce, exchangeable voucher. Then it is that's the word I would probably tell a common man to say this is what NFTs are. Reason why NFTs are becoming very important today is because it's given a new opportunity for at least artists, musicians, and those who create asset at scale and at speed to find an alternative way in which they can make some money out of it. But at the same time, I really worry myself if this is another golden goose that's going to get killed because it's just getting attention for all the wrong reasons instead of all the right reasons. Uh, that's my worry because it is not very easy to make to mint an NFT like this and make it available in the marketplace. I cannot create an NFT and put it on Google or Facebook or somewhere else. I need to go to a platform which runs on a public blockchain to make it sellable. So it automatically restricts adoption, but it has got appeal today, Varun. It's a good thing to do. It's a nice thing to do if it is managed very well. Uh, but and it is also if I have an NFT, it is only used if somebody else values it. If
Yeah.
nobody else values it, I can say I have an NFT with me. So it requires popular demand as well to be created. It's a nice thing to do, but lots of uh, time to go on this.
Yeah, what I found interesting about it is that till now, whenever we spoke about the use of blockchain or cryptography, it was a lot more technical, a lot more business. This suddenly felt like, and you mentioned the right usage, right? Is that for any creative person or creator creating anything, suddenly gives them an avenue to really understand this technology and understand how this could work for them. Because in that sense, I mean, I know that I know what you mean about how people start using it different ways. Right now, we're already talking about could you almost, if I'm a creator who has a YouTube channel, can I start selling NFTs of people to
Yes,
own part of me?
correct.
Is one conversation. I know there are also like crazy art sales happening where
Yeah,
GIFs are being sold at insane numbers.
yeah,
So I think the problem also is in the world that we live in, things can spiral and become very broad
yeah.
based and find the most bizarre uses very quickly. But I think for creative people, it's a great opportunity
Absolutely.
if they understand it right and use it right.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting revenue stream to build out.
Totally with you. That's what I'm saying. If let's say if there is a creative marketplace is created, uh, where budding artists can log into that marketplace and offer their asset or creation in a safe and secure manner, and others can buy it and they get rewarded for it in a decentralized manner, that's the best thing to happen to creators today. Because otherwise, today there's a long tail, and the big guys get all the attention. The small artists are always go unnoticed, right? This can give a very decentralized marketplace, but thing is, somebody has to first create that marketplace
Yeah.
for people to come in. That's where this hype curve of $180 million worth of a crypto asset being sold should not be the carrot to
Yeah.
go there, because not everybody is going to make $180 million. So there has to be some level of pragmatism. But that should not kill the idea of not creating a marketplace either. Yeah.
I related always to saying whenever someone says the NFT can be valued so much, I'm like, not every podcaster is going to get the Joe Rogan deal, right? It's just that simple comparison.
You will get it one day soon.
Okay. We all hope so. We all hope so. You know, and when I look at all the points we've discussed today, if I'm a if I'm someone in college who's
Right.
studying marketing, advertising, doing an MBA, which are still taught in a very traditional sense, right? None of this stuff is actually I don't think it's still part of anybody's syllabus there.
I agree with you more. Yes, that's the worry. Yeah.
And if I'm getting out of this world and I've been taught something very different from what the actual world is like, what are the career opportunities that I actually have, which I might not even think are opportunities, and what all should I kind of at least know the basics of, or rather brush up on?
Uh, uh, I see. Okay. I always advise people to go back to first principles. If you really want to be in marketing or communications industry, five principles are very important. It is all about reaching the right people at the right place at the right time, often enough to create a desired response. Five things. As long as you get those five questions answered to yourself or to your client, who is the audience, where are they, how often should I talk to them, what's the response I'm getting out of it, and use the technology as the levers, or as your booster to get it sharper. Then the principles matter the most, and tomorrow some other technology will come. Today, addressability is the means to get sharper targeting. Tomorrow you might just find voice recognition as the best way to target consumers better, and maybe 5 6 years down the line you might find some other technology to do it. But technology should be seen as an enabler. But if you really want to be in marketing, get these five principles as the boxes to be ticked, and equally don't become a victim of technology. Let that not You should not be under siege. You have to uh, constantly be in the lookout for emerging trends. That's part of our life, but that we can't avoid. You have to be tech savvy, because speed is of essence, and ability to manage voluminous data you cannot shy away from.
I have to ask you this. When you started off your career, is this what you thought you would be doing at this point?
Most definitely not. Most definitely not. It was yeah. It's a fascinating story, and for those who know me for a long time, when I started off, it was only print. The TV was not there in 1990. Uh, Gulf War in 1992 brought cable and satellite homes to the country. And then at that time, we used to still call it as CNS homes, for those who are listening who knows this time. And then we moved from satellite homes to digital homes, and then we moved into search. There was a time when you will remember Alta Vista and Lycos for a
Yeah,
long
yeah,
time
yeah.
before Yahoo. People don't remember it now as much as it was then. So at every stage, something or the other was happening. Every 5 years or 10 years. Uh, but I joined advertising to make a television commercial, not to be a media planner. That's a different story altogether. But it pushed me to media. But some of these developments kept me going, because there's always an interesting twist to the tale. But yes, to answer your question, most definitely not. This is not what I thought I will do.
And I think that's the examples you gave were so interesting, because how things change every couple of years, and that's cyclical. And I add back to what you spoke about first principles, because no matter how up to date you are,
Yeah,
what you know, there'll be something new that will come a month later, or like, I don't think we're at a year later stage anymore. We're at a month later or 2 months later, or
yeah,
hopefully a quarter later. But as long as you stick to that and I kind of evolve with it, then you will stay in it. And at some point, there is no like I know everything ever. There is always something new coming.
that's right. Absolutely.
Um, as we come towards the end of every episode, right, I ask my guests a set of questions which beyond the work. And my first question generally is that, apart from work, apart from what everybody knows that you do, what do you spend a lot of your time doing? What is that one thing, or a couple of things that really hold your interest beyond work, beyond what is publicly known?
Okay, so I'm very interested, and I spent a good amount of time in what they call as astroarchaeology.
Wow.
Uh, it's an interesting one where we use astronomical or celestial events to map the events in back in time. So 500 BC, 1500 BC. Many times at the time, the scriptures mentions the eclipse
Hmm.
as an event, and then you use the astronomical details to reconfirm whether when did the eclipse happen and did that lead to anything at the time. They are using it significantly now, along with radiocarbon dating, to date excavations as well. That fascinates me, and now I'm trying to find a way in which, when was the planetary conjunction, when all the planets came together, did it lead to anything, any events that happened there? So it keeps me, it's curious. So it's also a gossipy. It's good. It's a good dinner conversation when you have some people home for dinner. If somebody is interested, you can just throw this, and they generally have a lot of debates. And some will say, no, you're thinking too much. And it's nice. It's interesting. Yeah, that's what I do.
That's fascinating, because I've never heard of it used in that sense. But what you're just saying is very intriguing, and also I feel like this is just you finding another fun aspect of using what you anyway do in your day job. The way I see it, it's pretty much. I mean, I just some parts of it kind of add up.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, so it's nice. So that's what I do.
Um, Anything that you've watched or read or listened to in recent times that you'd recommend?
um, I watch. I watch everything that's coming on screen. I'm a OTT binge watcher whenever I find time in the night. So the like I was talking about to somebody else, I really loved WandaVision.
Hmm. Yeah,
I'm a Marvel freak, and I like the way they are building some of those characters,
I agree.
bringing each one of them to life with such depth. And I refer it to our industry to say that the integrity of the characters they bring into each one of them, and it's a big studio. Many directors come and create many storylines, but somehow all of them are have done nothing wrong to each of those characters. They
Yeah.
only make those characters go stronger and stronger. So that really fascinates me. And now the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's so many depth in terms of characters. I love it. So yeah, yeah.
I totally agree with you. I'm fascinated to know how the mind of Kevin Feige works most times. I'm like, how could, like, because he's the one who
Yeah,
worked largely to build that blueprint, right? And I'm always fascinated, like, how do you keep an eye on all those characters, that entire, how each thing adds up to each other? And I also feel at some point, I don't think at some point, he will say that it's not really add up. We figure it out as we go along.
that's right.
But it's just fascinating how they've brought that whole thing together.
Sheer creative freedom, yet none of the characters are loose. They are very tightly integrated. That is absolutely fascinating. Yeah.
And what can you put together in an instant?
Wow, I have not thought about this, Varun. You cooked me out. No, I download an app. So
Nah. Actually, after all, nobody's ever said this. This is the first time someone's given that response. That's actually true. You can actually download on a. Thank God, bandwidth is better these days. And my last question, generally, and it gets adapted episode by episode, is why do you think blockchain technology will not die?
why do you think the blockchain technology will not die? Okay. The only reason is there are more players seeking the truth. There is no single source of truth, and that's the only reason why this technology should not die.
Thank you so much, Jiman. Thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for also letting me take some of these conversations back to what I call the kindergarten of understanding some of these in theory, because I feel most people need to actually go there. At least I know I have to.
Super, super. Thank you. Thanks a lot.